Hi, I hope you are doing well. Today, we are going to go straight into unpack chapter 2 of Trevor Noah's Born a Crime. Trevor Noah was born in South Africa in 1984. Under the law at the time, that birth was a criminal act, and what does that even mean? The opening of the book, I Was Born a Crime, was not a metaphor. To understand what he means, you need to understand the system he was born into. Okay, so to really understand this story, we first have to understand the world Trevor Noah was born into. He doesn't just describe apartheid as racism, he calls it perfect racism. And he's talking about the system of apartheid in South Africa. Apartheid was a set of laws that separated people by race and controlled almost every part of their lives. Where you could live, where you could go to school, who you could marry, even where you could walk, all of it depended on the color of your skin. It wasn't random or unofficial. The whole system was carefully organized by the government, which is why Noah calls it perfect racism. Apartheid was not something that happened by accident. It was carefully planned. The people who designed apartheid studied other systems of racial segregation from countries like the United States, Australia, and the Netherlands. Then they took those ideas and built an even more controlled and complete system in South Africa. That is why Trevor Noah calls apartheid perfect racism. He means that it was not just about prejudice or unfair treatment. It was a whole legal system designed to separate people by race, control where they could live, who they could marry, where they could go to school, and even what kind of future they were allowed to imagine. So when Noah says he was born a crime, he is not exaggerating. He was born into a country where racism had been turned into law. We have to really understand apartheid, we have to go way back in history. Its roots began in 1652 when Dutch colonists first arrived in South Africa and started taking control of land and power. Later, the British came as well, and things became even more intense after huge amounts of gold and diamonds were discovered there. Suddenly, South Africa became extremely valuable, and the fight for power and wealth grew even stronger. Then, after World War II, the Afrikaner nationalist government officially turned racial separation into law. This system became known as apartheid. Under apartheid, people were divided by race from birth, and the government controlled almost every part of daily life. Where you could live, who you could marry, what jobs you could have, and even which schools you could attend were all decided by the color of your skin. And this is where apartheid gets even more extreme. The government created a strict racial hierarchy and legally sorted every person by race. White people were at the top with most of the power, while the black majority faced the harshest discrimination. But here's the really important part. South Africa also created an official category called colored for mixed-race people. That mattered because apartheid was built on the idea that races should stay completely separate, but mixed-race people were proof that those lines had already been crossed. In a way, their very existence challenged the logic of the entire system. Even in a system as strict and controlling as apartheid, some people refuse to follow the rules. This part introduces Trevor Noah's mother, Patricia, whose life became an act of rebellion against the system. Under apartheid, Black women had very limited job choices. Most were expected to work in factories or as maids. Patricia wanted a different future for herself. So she secretly trained to become a secretary and got an office job, even though those positions were supposed to be for white people only. By doing this, she was living in a way that the law considered illegal. To survive in Johannesburg, Patricia had to be extremely careful and resourceful. She learned how to avoid police attention and sometimes used a maid's uniform as a disguise so she could move around more safely. She also found someone willing to secretly rent her an apartment. Everyday life became a constant act of resistance against apartheid. Eventually, Patricia's dangerous lifestyle brought her to Hillbrow, a part of Johannesburg where apartheid laws were less strictly enforced. This was the beginning of what Trevor Noah later called the Hillbrow Alliance. Hillbrow was one of the few places in South Africa where people of different races mixed more freely. The area was known for underground clubs, parties, artists, and a rebellious atmosphere. Even though it felt exciting and open, police raids were always a serious danger. In Hillbrow, Patricia met her neighbor Robert, a quiet Swiss-German man. The two came from very different backgrounds, but they formed a friendship in a society built on racial separation and distrust. Their relationship challenged the ideas that apartheid to enforce. That friendship eventually led to the birth of Trevor Noah. Because interracial relationships were illegal under apartheid, his existence itself was considered a crime. This is why his memoir is called Born a Crime. Patricia decided that she wanted to have a child, but on her own terms. She asked Robert to be the father because she trusted him, not because she wanted marriage. Under apartheid law, a relationship between them was already forbidden. At first, Robert refused, but later he agreed. On the 20th of February 1984, Patricia gave birth to Trevor by C-section. She was completely alone because her family did not support her decision, and Robert was not legally allowed to be there. When the nurses noticed Trevor's lighter skin, Patricia quickly claimed that his father was from Swaziland. She had to protect herself and her child from suspicion. Robert's name could not appear on the birth certificate because the law did not recognize their relationship. From the moment he was born, Trevor's life depended on secrecy. His family constantly had to hide the truth in order to stay safe. Trevor's childhood was shaped by fear and careful pretending. His father had to walk on the opposite side of the street in public, and Trevor could not call him Dad outside the house. Sometimes Patricia even pretended to be a maid instead of his mother. Another neighbor would act as Trevor's mother so they could safely visit public places like parks. When Trevor visited his grandmother in Soweto, life became even more dangerous. His grandmother feared that the police would take him away because he was mixed race, so he often had to stay hidden indoors. All of this danger and secrecy raises an important question. Why did Patricia choose to stay in South Africa instead of leaving? As Trevor grew older, he met other mixed-race families who had left the country to escape apartheid. He eventually asked his mother why they had stayed when so many others chose exile. Patricia's answer explains her character and the message of the story. She simply said, "This is my country. Why should I leave?" Her response showed her determination to remain in her own home, despite the unfair laws of apartheid. That's the ultimate reason why Trevor Noah was quite literally born a crime. So, I hope you enjoyed this video. See you in Chapter 3.
If you'd like more personalized feedback, writing support, and discussion sessions, they're available with me or with our selected tutors. All the details are here.